The Haunting of Fosterwood Mansion. I was just a kid, a young orphan tossed from one foster home to another. My life had never been easy, and my heart ached for a place to call home. Little did I know that the foster home I was about to enter would be the stuff of nightmares. It was a gloomy, overcast day when I arrived at the Fosterwood Mansion. The place looked like something out of a horror movie, with its towering black gates and eerie silence. As I stepped out of the car, I couldn't help but shiver, feeling a chill run down my spine. The front door creaked open, revealing a tall, thin woman with sharp features and piercing eyes. She introduced herself as Mrs. Harrow, the head caretaker of the mansion. Her smile was as cold as ice, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease wash over me. "Welcome to Fosterwood, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "I'm sure you'll be very happy here." I nodded, trying to be polite, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As Mrs. Harrow led me inside, I couldn't help but notice the strange paintings that adorned the walls. They depicted children, all with hollow eyes and terrified expressions. My room was at the far end of the corridor, a dimly lit space with heavy curtains that blocked out any trace of daylight. As I unpacked my meager belongings, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. Something was off about this place, and I needed to find out what it was. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard strange noises coming from the hallway outside my door. It sounded like whispers, faint and eerie. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to make out what was being said. "They're ripe for the picking," a voice hissed. "Indeed," another replied. "The new one is particularly fresh." I felt my heart race as I realized that the voices belonged to Mrs. Harrow and her husband, Mr. Harrow. What were they talking about? My mind raced with horrifying possibilities. The next morning, I decided to explore the mansion while the Harrows were occupied. As I ventured into the basement, I stumbled upon a locked door. My curiosity got the best of me, and I managed to pick the lock. What I discovered beyond that door would haunt me for the rest of my life. It was a dark, damp chamber filled with cages, and inside those cages were children, just like me, their eyes vacant and hollow. They looked like they had been drained of life. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The Harrows were keeping children captive in their own home, and it was clear that something terrible was happening to them. I needed to find a way to escape and expose the truth. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard the whispers again, but this time they were coming from the basement. I slipped out of my room and made my way downstairs, hiding in the shadows as I watched the Harrows perform a sinister ritual. They stood over one of the cages, chanting in a language I couldn't understand. A dark, swirling mist enveloped the child inside the cage, and I watched in horror as their life force was drained away, leaving them a lifeless husk. I had seen enough. I knew I needed to escape before I became their next victim. With every ounce of courage I could muster, I slipped out of the mansion and ran into the dark woods that surrounded it. For days I wandered through the forest, desperate and afraid. I had no idea where I was going, but I couldn't go back to Fosterwood. I couldn't let the Harrows catch me. Eventually, I stumbled upon a small town, and I mustered the courage to tell the police everything I had witnessed. They were skeptical at first, but when they investigated Fosterwood Mansion, they discovered the horrifying truth. The Harrows had disappeared, and the remaining children they had held captive were rescued, at least the ones that were not touched by the Harrows. I believed that the Harrows were not human at all. They were monstrous creatures that fed on the life force of innocent children. Children that would not be missed and would go unnoticed. I was placed in a new foster home, one that was warm and loving, but the scars of my time at Fosterwood would never truly heal. I had discovered a terrifying secret about the caretakers in that mansion, a secret that would haunt me for the rest of my days. But I had also found the strength to escape and expose the truth, and for that I would be forever grateful. The horrors of Fosterwood Mansion were behind me, but the nightmares would never truly fade away. The Diary of Malevolent Whispers. I opened the attic door with a creak, the dusty air stinging my nose as I climbed the rickety stairs. My parents had always forbidden me from entering the attic, claiming it was filled with old, useless junk. But curiosity got the better of me that gloomy afternoon. The attic had always held a mysterious allure, and I couldn't resist exploring it any longer. As I stepped into the dimly lit attic, I couldn't help but shiver. It was colder up here than the rest of the house, and the air was thick with an eerie silence. Boxes and crates were scattered haphazardly, their contents long forgotten by whoever had put them there. I moved carefully, the wooden floorboards groaning beneath my feet. In the corner of the attic, I spotted an old, dusty chest. It looked ancient, as if it had been here for generations. My heart raced as I approached it, and I hesitated for a moment before lifting the lid. Inside, nestled among moth-eaten blankets and forgotten trinkets, I found an old, leather-bound diary. The diary felt brittle in my hands, its pages yellowed with age. I carefully opened it, and the faded ink on the first page caught my attention. The diary belonged to someone named Emily, and it chronicled her haunting experiences in the house. Dear diary, it has been a week since we moved into this old house, and strange things have been happening. At night, I hear whispers in the darkness, and the air grows cold. Shadows move in the corners of my room, and I'm terrified to sleep alone. I couldn't help but shiver as I read those words. Emily's writing was shaky, and her fear was palpable in the words she had penned. I turned the page, my curiosity growing. The whispers have grown louder, and I've seen figures in the hallway at night. My husband, John, thinks I'm going mad, but I know what I've seen. Last night, I heard a voice beckoning me from the attic. I was drawn to it, unable to resist. I felt a chill run down my spine as I continued reading Emily's diary. It was as if her words were coming to life right before my eyes. I turned to the next page, my heart pounding. September 2nd, 1925. I ventured into the attic tonight, guided by an invisible force. I found an old book hidden among the crates. It was filled with incantations and rituals. I didn't understand it, but I felt compelled to read from it. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Emily had found a book of dark magic in the attic. The diary continued to chronicle her descent into madness as she attempted to perform the rituals she had discovered. The entries became more frantic and incoherent as the days passed. The entity has awakened. I see it in the shadows, its eyes filled with malevolence. It torments me, whispering terrible things in my ear. It wants something from me, something I cannot give. I felt a presence in the attic with me, as if someone or something was watching. But I couldn't stop reading Emily's diary. I had to know how her story ended. It's too late for me. The entity has taken control. I can no longer fight it. I leave this diary as a warning to anyone who finds it. Do not read from the book. Do not summon the entity. The final entry sent a shiver down my spine. Emily's diary was filled with terror and despair, and it left me with a sinking feeling in my gut. I closed the diary and placed it back in the chest, feeling a sense of unease wash over me. As I turned to leave the attic, I heard a faint whisper behind me. It hissed, the voice cold and malevolent. I froze in fear, unable to move. Shadows danced around me, and the air grew colder with each passing second. The entity that Emily had summoned had been awakened once more, and it hungered for something it believed I could provide. Panic coursed through my veins as I realized the terrible mistake I had made by reading from the diary. I had unwittingly summoned a malevolent force into our home. Days turned into nights filled with terror as the entity's presence grew stronger. It whispered in the darkness, tormenting me with horrifying visions and promises of unspeakable horrors. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and couldn't escape its relentless torment. Desperation drove me back to the attic, where I hoped to find a way to banish the entity. I searched through the crates and boxes, trying to find the book that Emily had mentioned in her diary, but it was nowhere to be found. The entity's grip on me tightened with each passing day, and I knew that my only chance of survival lay in discovering the secrets of that dark book. I began to research ancient rituals and incantations, hoping to find a way to counteract the entity's power. One night, as I delved deeper into my research, I heard a whisper in my ear.
"You will never be free,"
it hissed. I turned to confront the entity, my heart pounding with fear. But there was nothing there, just an empty room filled with a sense of dread. I knew that I was running out of time. The entity's torment was driving me to the brink of madness, and I could feel it slowly consuming my soul. I had to find a way to stop it, to break the curse that had been unleashed upon me. With each passing day, I grew weaker, my mind consumed by the entity's relentless presence. But I refused to give in. I scoured ancient texts, consulted with experts in the occult, and performed desperate rituals in a desperate attempt to banish the malevolent force that had invaded my life. And then, one fateful night, as I sat in the attic surrounded by candles and incense, I found the answer. The book that Emily had mentioned, hidden away in a dusty corner of the attic, its pages filled with dark incantations and rituals. With trembling hands, I began to recite the words, hoping that they would have the power to banish the entity once and for all. The room filled with an otherworldly light, and I felt a surge of energy coursing through me. The entity let out a blood-curdling scream, its form dissipating into a wisp of smoke before vanishing into the darkness. The attic was silent once more, and the oppressive sense of dread that had hung in the air for so long finally lifted. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. I had defeated the malevolent entity, but I knew that its presence would forever haunt my nightmares. I had ventured into the attic out of curiosity, and I had paid the price for my recklessness. As I closed the dark book and sealed it away in the chest, I couldn't help but wonder if someone else would stumble upon it in the future, just as I had, and I prayed that they would heed the warning left behind by Emily's diary, and resist the temptation to summon the entity that lurked in the shadows of that old cursed house. Thanks for watching. To support us, please like and subscribe.